As time went by, some people began to argue that if the bank had issued £100 of paper receipts, it should keep £100 of gold coins in the vault as a reserve. But the bankers said that most of their customers didn't ask to redeem their receipts for gold, so for every £100 of paper receipts outstanding, they only needed to keep a small fraction as gold in the vault. This debate mattered vitally. With a fractional reserve of 20%, for example, the bank could take a deposit of £100 in gold coins, issue £100 worth of receipts to the depositor, and then create another £400 worth of receipts for lending to borrowers. A total of £500 of paper money would have been created, but there would only be £100 of gold coins in the bank vault.
In 1844, Robert Peel passed the Bank Charter Act with the aim of preventing banks from creating paper money in excess of their gold reserves. However, the banks were one step ahead of the game. As soon as the Act was passed, they adopted a new system of money creation, the cheque and account system.
Imagine there's just one bank in the economy with two customers who open a new account. They both start with a zero balance on their accounts and the bank issues them with a chequebook. Let's say customer A buys a watch from customer B for £100 and writes a cheque in payment. Customer B deposits the cheque in the bank, and now the bank credits customer B with £100 and debits customer A by the same amount. £100 of new money has appeared out of nothing in B's account, and A is in overdraft by an equal amount. Here we can clearly see that for every unit of money created by the bank, an equal amount of debt comes into existence. Notice also that if A repays the debt by depositing a cheque drawn on customer B, then money is destroyed. This is one reason that modern society simply cannot afford to repay their debt. Debt repayment destroys money and causes economic recession.
Have you ever been worried by being in debt?
Yes, a lot of times. Having just graduated university, high levels of student debt. Yeah, very worried.
Have you ever worried about being in debt?
Yes, I have worried about being in debt, often.
How does it worry you?
It worries me because I'm concerned that I can't feed my family, I can't pay my mortgage. It's just the general level of stress.
Have you ever been worried by being in debt?
Yes, I have occasionally. I think there's a nasty feeling of gradually, especially say unemployment or something like this, there's a nasty feeling of money running out finally.
Today it's the government that creates the paper money in our pockets, not the private banks. The banks create money in the form of electronic credits, credits that appear on our bank statements, and that we can withdraw using chequebooks or debit cards, for instance.
It is like a kind of hypnotism, it's a kind of confidence trick. And as long as you can actually put a bit of plastic in the wall and paper money will come out and someone will give you something for it, that's fine. But often you find when that system collapses, when there's a meltdown, for example, people can't get the money out of the wall, then the panic spreads very quickly.
Here's a graph showing the extent of bank money creation. The red bit at the bottom is the amount of money created by the state, the grey bit shows the amount created by the banks. Society is paying interest every year on that huge amount of money that's been loaned into existence by the banking system. When Abraham Lincoln wanted to finance the Civil War in America, he decided to print paper money himself. He instructed Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Chase, to print $400 million of Treasury notes. This Chase duly did, using green ink, hence the term greenback. By this measure, Lincoln saved the American government a huge sum in interest charges. The bankers weren't happy at all. A few years later, during the First World War, the British government decided to do the same thing. They created their own Treasury notes and made them legal tender. Here's one of them. Notice it's issued by the Treasury on behalf of the government, not by the Bank of England. So why did society not demand an end to the creation of money at interest by private companies? One reason is that some businessmen found a way of making money out of the system as it was. They would borrow money from the bank at a rate of interest that was below the rate of profit they could make in their businesses. So, for example, if a businessman borrowed £100 at 5% interest and invested it at 20% profit, he'd pay £5 back to the bank and keep £15 for himself. But under this system, the tendency was for businessmen to borrow as much as they could. If borrowing £100 produced £15 of profit, then why not borrow 100 million and make £15 million of profit? The idea became to borrow as much as possible,
which meant that companies would undertake large-scale projects, that they would grow big.
And this is one of the results of that mentality. In the autumn of 2005, you could walk down a high street and buy electronic goods from any of these stores. Dixon's, The Link, Curry's, PC World. It looks like wonderful competition, just the sort that free market economists rejoice over. But there's less choice than you might think. All these stores are owned by the same company, Dixon's Group plc. Even in the building sector, you can see the results of leverage at work. Here's a village near to where I live in England. It grew up over hundreds of years, each house designed by a different designer, built by a different builder, to match the tastes of the people who'd live here. It's beautiful, isn't it? But they're not building villages like this anymore. This is what they're building just around the corner. Take one green field and build 600 identical houses on it, all designed by the same designer, built by the same building firm, constructed with the same sets of materials. These are houses built for profit by a big corporation whose directors probably wouldn't want to live here. And this is what we're losing: variety, communities, life on a human scale. The big multinationals are coming to dominate human economic activity. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, they're working on £6 an hour for the local supermarket. At the personal level, the pressure caused by debt is widely acknowledged. Lord Griffiths concluded in 2004 that approximately 12 million people in the United Kingdom suffered debt-related stress, some 3 million severely. And because banks like to lend money to people who have collateral, it's the wealthy ones who usually get the largest loans. This produces a kind of vicious circle in which the poor stay poor and the wealthy get wealthier. Perhaps most worrying of all is the impact that interest is having on the environment. 10 years ago, I published data showing that the world's most indebted countries are also among its fastest deforesters. When there's a huge foreign debt to repay, rainforest doesn't stand much of a chance. The fact is that our debt-based financial system is forcing us into patterns of economic activity that are destroying the planet.
Does the Bank of England create money?
Do you know, I've never actually thought about it from that point of view. I wouldn't have thought so, no.
What do you mean, where the money comes
Yeah,
from?
who manufactures it?
I don't know, I haven't got a clue, to be honest.
With such huge profits at stake, there will of course be resistance to change. The global banking sector can earn in excess of $1 trillion of revenue in a good year. That's a big lobby in favour of the status quo, a lobby that's prepared to spend at least some of its profits on advertising, on political lobbying, and in the academic world too. For example, the London Business School was promoted by the big banks of the United Kingdom in order to create the next generation of banking executives. If we could have an honest debate on modern banking and finance, the public would soon come to understand why so many of us are in constant debt. But honest debate is one thing that's in short supply these days. On the one hand, we're told that our financial crisis is the result of too much debt, but then we're told that the solution is for the banks to lend more. How can that be?